Let's face it, if you're a man, then you are probably dealing with problems and challenges with women. Now, I've got some good news and some bad news for you. Your success with women literally boils down to one thing. The bad news is, if you don't have it, nothing else will work. All of the money, good looks, and all of the best pickup and game skills out there will fail without you mastering this one thing. And that one thing is frame. The answers to ending your pain and suffering and to start living an amazing life with women is just one click away. Click the link and let's get started. Are you?
All right. Starting off with a little ad here. My frame and mastermind program and seduction program is available right now for a small handful of people who might be interested. That link is in the description. You'll work with me for a year and we'll get you completely leveled up with your situation with dating, relationships, and your sex life. So go do that. All right. Hit that thing. And there's a free webinar on frame in there. On my new channel, I'm going to be putting a series out on frame again as well. And so that's some good stuff that you guys might enjoy. All right. So high value man, let's talk about that. Of course, hello to everybody. And if you guys have any questions, throw a little super chat in there. Helps the algorithms out. It's the only way your likes, hitting the like button, and your supers, even if it's not, doesn't have to be a large amount of money. That's what helps me fight algorithm problems. All right. We're going to put this whole thing to bed right now. Anybody who's in the men's health space right now, who watches Fresh and Fit, which is a lot of people, man, that's a very, very big show. Who pays attention to Rollo Tomassi, Rational Male. He's I'd say a prolific author, and I would consider him a friend of mine. Guys who pay attention to Sneako and Destiny. That's it. They got huge followings. I don't really know them that well. But hey, there's a lot of talk going on about this high value male thing. And I'm going to tell you why it doesn't matter and why it's all bullshit. Right? Why it's BS. Not to say that it's bad for these guys to have these debates and discussion. I think it's fine. I want to give a quick shout out right now to Myron and Fresh over at Fresh and Fit. I don't usually watch their show, not anything personal against them. It's just I don't watch that much content. I really don't. I have friends of mine like Rollo's, Ryan and John from Modern Life Dating, Rich Cooper. He has a great show. I don't watch it. I mean, sometimes I catch little things here and there. I don't have time because I'm dealing with clients and I'm dealing with people who take my courses and I'm working with real people. Not that they're not working with real people in their own rights, but I'm just saying I'm not an audience member like you guys are. I'm working with real people on getting their situation squared away. I'm working with them on their mindset and on their inner game. I'm working with them on becoming that better version of themselves, right? Whatever that looks like to them. And I'm helping them with their relationships. And so I am booked throughout the day through my coursework and through my appointments with that. So I don't really spend a lot of time in my free time binge watching this stuff on the internet. First time I heard about, I'm not saying a first time, but like I've only heard, like first time I ever watched anything involving Destiny was like this recent debate. I'm not even finished with it. I just decided to watch a little piece of it, over at Fresh and Fit. Oh, back to my shout out though. There I get distracted. The shout out is I've only gotten through a portion of the show. I decided to try to watch the most recent show they did where they did this debate. I saw the sort of clip where, Rollo called in and it was like, and that whole conversation was an absolute shit show, in my opinion, from everybody involved. No offense to my friends, but I thought it was stupid. Okay. But the recent show they just did was pretty well done, at least from so far from what I got. They're having a good discussion, or had a good discussion. It's really long. But they got the what do you call it? The breaks, the chapters, the whatever that is. But you can scroll through, pick the parts you like if you don't have, whatever it is, 3 or 4 hours to watch the whole thing. But they are having a good discussion. And I'll tell you what, when people come together to have a good discussion, they're a lot more likable. I hear the most of the things I've heard about, Sneako and Destiny were a lot of just, this person's a cuck and this person's this and this person, a lot of name calling on Twitter, all that crap, right? They're not doing themselves much justice when I do catch a clip and it's just them just sort of making fun of somebody or whatever, right? In terms of likability, right? It just looks like a lot of trolling. But I will say though, they were all very likable in this discussion. Not that whether or not I like them or not, it's going to cause anyone to lose sleep at night. But, when people come together and can have a good objective discussion without attacking each other, people look a lot better, and there's a lot more productive, right? And you know what? The other thing is, it's like, it also goes to tell you too, people aren't necessarily who they are on the internet, all of these guys know something a little bit more than I do about algorithms and about getting themselves out there. And some of me not getting out there in the same way is just me not willing to play the game as badly. Although I am surprised at some of my shorts and the amount of divisiveness that has occurred with those things, because to me, I'm not saying anything that bad and people get really triggered and upset, which we'll talk about that. But in general, why that happens. But to go out in left field, unless it's me just doing outright humor like I do on Twitter, it's just not something that I'm willing to participate in as much. So I don't understand it that much. I don't understand what the point is, but it just goes to show too, most people are not you guys on my stream right now. Most people are not trying to help themselves. Most people just want to be entertained. Most people are too stupid, whether it's willful stupidity or just stupidity at birth. They're too dumb to have reasonable, logical discussions when it comes to these things. They're too dumb to take ownership for their own lives. This is hopefully not you right now watching me, but this is a lot of people. And unfortunately, that's the masses. And that's why, the dumb stuff gets all the views. It's just not my thing, man. I think it's a waste. But that said, though, again, shout out to the Fresh and Fit crew for moderating that debate. And shout out to Rollo and Mike Sartain and Destiny and Sneako, all from at least up to the point I've watched at this point, having a pretty good discussion. All right. That's good. So my hat's off to those guys. And, I found points with everybody that I could agree or disagree on. That said, though, it's all the stuff of the high value male thing is it's really just mental masturbation anyway. All right. Thanks for the shout out there, Nicholas, and the good compliment there. All right. And yes, it's generally pretty unproductive. It's just verbal sparring. I'd rather watch people actually spar. That's more fun. All right. So at any rate, let's get into some stuff as to why it's a waste of time. But why? Yeah, it's so much talking. I'm even talking about it now, but I'm going to talk about it from an objective point of view, though, so you guys can actually help yourselves. By the end of this stream, okay, you're going to have some valuable tools that you can use to help you get what you want in life, to get what you want and to be happy. And that's all I'm really interested in. And as long as that definition doesn't involve harming other people, I'm on board with your definition of what happiness looks like and what getting what you want and achieving those goals would look like. And I have tools for you that will help you get to those things. Okay. And the high value male debate isn't much of a debate that's going to help you because it does nothing for your happiness. And it doesn't give you really anything in terms of tools to get to goals or to happiness. All right. So we'll talk about what that is. But value, what is value? Value is an exchange. Okay. It's an exchange. You offer someone something that benefits them. That is you providing value to them. They do the same to you. They're providing value to you. But what one perceives as benefit, right, can differ a little bit from person to person and also in levels of importance. And when we're talking about something like mate value, right, or SMV, your value to a short term or long term partner, that starts to get very subjective. Okay. Now we have, and not only that, not only is it subjective, but that value is perceived and it's not even something that you're delivering unless you're in relationship to with somebody. It is the promise or the expectation of being able to offer that value. So for example, if a guy signals, we'll use money because the money is an easy, measure of a type of thing that's valuable. If a guy is signaling to raise his mate value that he has a lot of money, right? He's wearing the clothes, he's wearing the brand name stuff, he's got the car, he's got, some assets, he talks in such a way, and a girl in the marketplace thinks he has money, right? That's one element of value. If she values money, now it's pretty much everybody values money to a degree, okay, which is why money is like, oh, that's not subjective, it's objective. But here's the thing, one girl might care a lot more about money than another girl, right? In other words, one girl might want the guy who just makes the most amount possible, right? Another girl might not care that much past a certain point. And we'll talk about primal needs and security needs and what that looks like. All right. And again, this is going to be a higher level discussion. This is the Apex Inner Game Show where we have higher level discussions about dating, relationships, sex, and mindset issues. So it's going to get a little complex. If you're a binary thinker that needs to have an either or an or and to jump on a team, this probably isn't the show for you. If you're, just not interested in helping yourself and more interested in being entertained, although I think I can be entertaining sometimes, that's probably not it, right? You probably need to go someplace else. But if you're interested in actually getting into a nuanced discussion, learning something and bettering yourself, you come to the right place. All right. So hopefully I can offer something to you today. But in any sense, okay, it's the promise of value. That guy signals he has money, but maybe he objectively doesn't, right? And maybe he just managed to sleep with a girl because one of the things was money that he signaled, and that was important to her. And he had some other elements in play, but the money part was, the appearance of success and the appearance of money gave the promise of being able to take care of her from a security perspective later, whether it's short-term mating where they're going and doing cool stuff and he's paying for it, or whether it's long-term mating potential, right? And then it turns out he's actually doesn't, he's overspent or doesn't have any money or he's bankrupt, right? He just was signaling that. She just got duped. Okay. So was his value, really that? No, it's a perceived value. She still slept with him based on perceived value, and the actual value of what he had to offer wasn't there. So when we're looking at the sexual market value or the mate value outside of the relationship, like, is this guy a high value man? It's really just looking at the promise of being able to fulfill certain needs. right? Not the actual execution of filling those needs. That's what happens in the dynamic of the relationship. So somebody's relationship value to another person is actually different than their mate value when we talk about SMV, because SMV is the appearance or the promise of it. SMV is very closely related to status. Status by itself is a high marker for attraction and for women. But what status is a lot of things. Social proof is what's tied to status, and it's social proof of being able to fulfill these primal needs that a woman might have. But the guy with status isn't actually fulfilling those needs with somebody unless he is in some sort of relationship with them, be it short term or long term, one night or, 10 years of marriage. Until he's in an exchange with her in a relationship, he's not providing actual value. It's the promise of it with status. And that promise is displayed through social proof. That's what status is. Sexual market value doesn't depend on social proof. Social proof is just part of the equation when we're measuring sexual market value. So it's the promise of supplying someone with needs. It's not the actuality of doing so. Okay, that's what happens in the relationship exchange. So those are different things. And the more we move away from the broad categories of the promise of supplying someone with their needs into the smaller subcategories of having needs and wants and things of different level of importance in a relationship exchange, the more we get down to the individual, the more subjective and nuanced that perception of value gets. Okay. And so this is why this whole idea of value or high value man, it's actually just subjective in a sense, because when you get down to your partner, well, one girl might value, right, in terms of what you give to her, what you actually offer her, what you're actually doing for her, not the promise of it, but what you're actually doing for her, okay, might be different in perception of how valuable that is versus another. All right. And so, for example, a girl who's in her party years, just sleeping with a drug dealer and having a good time and doesn't care if he buys her stuff, that's saying, that's one perception of value. Maybe a guy who has his crap together and has some resources, but who isn't that cool. He isn't as cool as the drug dealer. You know what I mean? He isn't as cool as the party guy, right? That provides access to stuff, but the guy who's on his purpose and achieving stuff and, building wealth, that guy's maybe not as attractive to the 19, 20-year-old party girl as that party drug dealer guy. Because what she's getting from party drug dealer guy is supplying her subjective needs at that time. And then maybe she grows up and her needs change. And we see that timeline that Rollo points out, right? Which is that, that timeline of the different phases of a woman's life and what needs kind of come in the forefront versus what works in the background, right? This is very subjective. It's not going to be the same for everybody. All right. When it comes down to their actual value in the relationship that you're having, be it short-term or casual or long-term or serious. So what matters about this high value man discussion in these broad categories really don't matter. And we want to get into, you talk about, okay, so when you watch, if you go back and watch this episode there of Fresh and Fit, where they're having this actual debate, having a really good discussion. Hats off again to the moderators for that one, right? And all the participants. But when they're having that discussion, they spent quite a bit of time trying to define what high value man was And it was, everyone had a slightly different definition. Everybody did, which means, yeah, they could agree on certain principles, but when it came down to the actual nuance of it, there's not agreed upon definition. So what do we have when something isn't agreed upon, like a not agreed upon definition? What we have then is a container word. So container word is a word where there's no real clear definition, even though there's a lot of similarities in what people might think about that word. So what people do is they put into the word what they want it to mean. And so they give the word a meaning that suits them and their narrative, right? And their programming or their ideas, and usually benefits them, right? So a guy might say, like, this is the criteria for high value man because he fits the criteria. He meets the cutoff, right? And then another guy might say, well, no, here's the criteria, here's the differences. And then, that means this guy over here doesn't fit that criteria. And then he gets mad about it and says, well, that's not what a high value man is, because he wants to have that identity of a high value man, right? Everybody wants the identity of the high value man. And so everybody has different definitions that slightly vary. So it fits their worldview and usually benefits them. Usually it benefits, where they're at. Okay. And so it's like arguing about the definition of love, right? Well, that love thing, we can come up with general things. We can come up with, we can talk about drives, which I'm going to talk about today. Mate drives, things that are consistent with our genetic upbringing. However, the subjective definition and what love means to somebody, that's going to be up to the individual. Those nuances and those little, things that they think is important over here or important over there, that's going to be up to the individual. And that's going to be up to, the partners that say that they're in love with each other and what that means to them. And it's very subjective, right? It's very subjective. High value man, it's like the same thing. High value woman, same kind of thing. All right. But it's really popular to talk about, isn't it? Right? It's really popular to talk about. And the reason it's so popular is because people wrap their self-esteem and identity into it. And so what you have now is what's called a safe world theory. What's a safe world theory? All right. You guys anyone knows in the chat, go ahead and write a definition down while I explain it. See who's paying attention to my content. But a safe world theory is a belief that somebody has that allows them to operate safely in the world, pretty much. All right. So we all have ideas because we're all searching for meaning. We all want to have, we all want to thrive by whatever our definition of thriving is. And so we have ways of perceiving the world that will allow our brain to not signal danger signals, right? And to signal, okay, we're safe, we're good, we're comfortable, we're moving towards success, we're moving towards meeting our existential needs, right? And if we're not moving towards our existential needs, well, that puts us in an existential crisis, which brings up death anxiety. It brings up anxiety of our existence and what we're doing here and whether we're doing the right thing and whether we have the right answers or not. And when people are confronted with that death anxiety, with that existential crisis, they push back really, really hard, because deep down into the corners of their brain and their stress areas of their brain, right, where fear and anxiety lurks around, that is ignited. Okay. That death anxiety is deep and a crisis. And I say death anxiety, it's not just fear of dying, but it's fears related to existence too. Okay. And so guys And women alike will have a visceral reaction when their safe world theory is challenged, because their safe world theory is allowing them to operate in the world and ignore their imminent demise, right? And ignore the possibility, or maybe even probability, that they're doing it wrong and that their existence isn't going to amount to anything because they're following the wrong set of rules, or following the wrong path, or following the wrong set of principles. And so that safe world theory is why something like High Value Man all of a sudden is cause for viral discussions. And most of those discussions aren't a healthy debate like what I've seen so far. Again, not even through the first hour of the show yet, but the recent one I referenced already. It's usually an argument. It's usually an insult. It's usually people pushing their heels in harder, right? And digging in their heels and trying to confirm their biases. And when evidence to the contrary is brought to the table, what happens? More and more confirmation bias. And they've done that research with things like political discussions and stuff like that. When something is an existential threat to somebody, okay, or discussions involving values, principles, and things like that, that points to, safe world theories and existential threats, people tend to become more and more, convinced of their point of view, and they dig their heels in harder, and they become more and more adamant about their point of view when more and more evidence is brought to the table to show that their point of view might be wrong, right? And that's why these discussions and debates end up in the toilet. And that's why you guys get so interested in these discussions. And that's why you guys are adamant. And I'm sure I will see comments and things in the chat of people adamantly espousing what their safe world theory is about what it means to be high value. All right. And so how do you move away from that and be objective? Well, in the frame program, I talk about having your own frame. And part of having your own frame is separating from the programming that has already been happening to you. Okay. The Tates are not wrong when they talk about the Matrix. They just market it better than I do. It sounds really divisive and like there's a cabal of people conspiring in the background to control the world and stuff. And I don't know if that's what they believe or not, but but they talk about the Matrix. It's just because they're better at marketing. And I don't mean that I don't mean to say that flippantly. Like, really, they're better at marketing. Like, I need to take lessons from those dudes on how to market, because I don't know what I'm doing here. I just know how to have these discussions with you. Right? Anything I do that's successful marketing wise, I've gotten advice from somebody, let me tell you. All right. But they're good at putting words to, concepts that resonate with people. The Matrix, that's one that resonates with people and that causes discussion. What are they talking about? What is that? Well, it's through your programming. So your programming is a product of who you are. You have your genetics and who you are. Okay. That's your genetic makeup. But then you have, since you were a child, you have been trying to find your identity and finding where and how you exist in the world. It started as a baby where your identity wasn't separate from your caregivers. And then it moved along. And as you started to grow and mature, and your brain started to mature, you went through different rebellion periods. Teenage rebellion is teenagers or kids trying to find their own identity separate from their caregivers. In an absence of a good or solid caregiver unit, which would be a mother and a father, which most of you statistically haven't had that growing up. In absence of that, you look for replacements, right? But even if you had strong mother, father figures, you're still going to try to seek out yourself in the world separate from your parental figures. And that's going to involve looking to influences, looking to other role models, looking to peers, your friends groups, right? Looking to political ideologies, looking to whatever. And guess what? There's a lot of money to be made off of that, because marketing, see, and conceptually I get marketing. It's just that I think it's just something in me doesn't like want to do certain things. Maybe I could. Maybe I'm just have my own mental blocks I need to work on, right? I have my flaws. But, you know, marketing is like, if I said this brand of water, whatever this brand of water is, it's not, they're not giving me a sponsorship, so I don't care. But that brand of water is the cleanest, best water, you know? And I send that message into the world, and I send it through subtle messages, subliminal messages, overt messages, clever commercials, things like that, you know, pop-up ads, things you don't even notice when you're scrolling. And then, of course, things that you do notice and that are impacting and get you talking about it. You find yourself just picking up that water. You find that this brand of water, whatever this brand of water is, you know, this brand of water is the answer to having clean water in your health. And it's the way to go. It's better than the other brand of waters. Is it true? Maybe, maybe not, right? But you've been programmed to think it. Well, this is the same with down to your core beliefs. You've been programmed. It's just the fact. All right. And so even the things you think, and this is the argument against free will, by the way, I'm not someone who would argue and say that there isn't free will. All right. Although some people take that stance, and I know why. The reason they take that stance is because whether they know it or not, it's this idea of programming. Your influences have influenced largely the decisions you make, your habits, your beliefs, and even down to your decisions that you think are conscious decisions. Many of those decisions have been influenced so greatly by outside sources that you're not in control of it. Guys, uncomfortable yet? You uncomfortable? All right. Do you see why this is uncomfortable, isn't it? It's kind of uncomfortable to think that all your decisions, maybe or most, maybe 90% of your decisions up to this point wasn't you. Right? That's, oh, hey, you know, who you are isn't who you are, you know? This is how people go crazy. So don't go crazy on me. Stick with me. All right. But this programming is why people cling to ideas to try to have an identity, to be able to figure out how to operate safely in the world. All right. Now, in my frame course, it's not just about getting women. All right. It's about unplugging. Unplugging because you recognize the influences and you decide what your programming is going to be. You can't remove all influences. Some people have tried and have done it relatively successfully in our history. Think like Buddha, you know, think somebody who goes in a cave or goes in a monastery and meditates and tries to separate themselves from the world, like those sorts of things. What are they doing? Trying to unplug. That's just one way of doing it. There's many ways to try to unplug. Okay. And what I'm suggesting you do, well, and in my course, I teach it. Why do I teach it? Because when you get through this, your frame is impeccable. All right. And then you can lead your relationships very well when you have impeccable frame, because you are now in charge of your own programming. Not me, not whatever alpha male coach guy says you need to do to be an alpha male, not whatever influencer says is a high value male that you need to go do, right? Not what anybody else tells you, but what you want it to be, right? You are discovering what you want it to be. And that's hard. It's really hard because that requires you to face a massive existential threat, which is that you don't know what your identity is, and you don't know how you're existing in the world right now. Okay. When you face that down, though, and you face that fear, and you come out the other side, you got a whole new world ahead of you. with a totally different frame and one that is your own. Doesn't mean you're not influenced by everybody, by everybody else, right? You are influenced, but you control it. You can question the influences that you don't like. Okay. And you can ignore or push away those influences. And you can invite the influences that are productive for you, that are helpful to you, that help you to reach your goals, And so you end up being in control of who and what is influencing you and how they're influencing you. That is how you take charge of your own programming. I teach that. Okay. But it takes time. Once they have that, now seduction becomes impeccable. I mean, it becomes flawless for a lot of people. Right. And so when you master that, when you master your own frame, that becomes flawless. But back to high value man. High value man, and the idea is just the new alpha male. Rollo said that. And I said that too on Rule 0. I don't know if he took it from me or we just both had the same idea. All right. But we, makes sense. Doesn't matter who originated it. And I'm not like that anyway. I tell people, steal my ideas. I appreciate credit if there is. And if it's not, sometimes just converging evidence. We just have the same ideas. But yeah, high value man, it's a new alpha male. That's a new container word that guys need to latch on to so that they can believe in women. Kevin Samuels, talk about high value man and then high value women and what makes a woman valuable to a man. And then there's all the arguments, right? And then there's the blood sport. Well, it's great for views, great for clicks, but it's meaningless because you're going by another person's programming. You got to take charge of your own programming. Because at the end of the day, what matters is we're talking about now relationships, sex, and dating. What matters is the girl that you're seeing, okay? Or girls, plural, if you're dating, right? For the girl, it matters the guys that she wants to get, the guys that she's seeing. For you guys, the girls that you want to get, the girls that you're seeing. Down to that subjective person, that individual. It's what is valuable to them that matters, not some broad definition that we mentally masturbate over in a debate or in a talk like this one, you know what I mean, or whatever. It matters. What matters is the application of and the giving of value and receiving of value through the relationship exchange. All right. That's what matters when we're talking about mate value and stuff and sexual market value. All right. That's it. All matters. And that girl's perceptions, values, beliefs are going to vary a little bit. Does everyone kind of value money? Yeah, sure. That's a good general rule, right? But how much is important? How much matters to this girl? Right? That's going to be subjective. How heavily weighted is money versus the sexual experience or the emotional connection or, certain attractiveness cues or loyalty? How about that? Some girls don't want, for some girls, a lot of girls, in fact, let's say a lot of girls will turn down the guy with more money for the more loyal guy. Most girls will actually do that. They just won't go below a certain point. But maybe they do. Plenty of girls go for broke guys and get in long-term relationships with them because their perception of how important that isn't that high compared to the other things that this person is providing for that woman, what she perceives. Okay. And if she's dysfunctional and has issues, then her perceived value, like what she perceives as valuable, is also going to be dysfunctional, right? Same with you. You're dysfunctional, and what you think is good in a chick is probably dysfunctional, right? And so now we have really skewed ideas of what's important that might not lead to the happiness these people are trying to achieve, all right? So you got to find out what it is for you. Not what Rollo thinks it is. I mean, it's great. He's smart, but it doesn't matter. He's not in your relationship. He's not banging your girl for you. Not what Destiny thinks it is. Not what Sneako. Not what I think it is. Not what Myron thinks it is. That doesn't matter. Okay. What matters is what you value, because of what you want. You have to look at the types of relationship partners you want, and the things that they're going to want out of the relationship, and the things that you want to be valued for. And that's what's going to determine the things that you work on. But you decide and you determine what those are. You don't wait for me to tell you. Okay? I'm not banging your girl. Hopefully. That'd be weird. That'd be weird if that was the case. All right. Take a peek at the chat. No supers. You guys hate me. I'm just kidding. What do we got here? Paul's water grows new tattoos. Juan. Oh, man. All right. What do we got? Oh, more comments down here. Oh, let's see. I'm just going to pick random ones. Here's one. T Diamond. I hate that a lot of people conflate high value man with high value income man. I know, right? T Diamond is one of my female listeners. So she's looking for, she wants to have happiness with a dude, right? And she'll tell you, as a lot of women will tell you, and then you guys will come back, well, don't listen to what they say, watch what they do. But even if you watch what they do, dude, like, how many girls go for short-term mates that don't have shit going for them? And if you remember my talk on the difference between the alpha and the breeder, okay, you'll know what I mean. A lot of girls pick short-term mates that, by definition of the internet, are low-value men. And they pick those guys because there's no pressure and it's easy sex for them. And there's other signals that are there that makes her feel sexually comfortable. But like, as far as, what the internet thinks is valuable, she just doesn't care about those things. And in fact, those things might make her a little more intimidated. And she values other things. That's what it is. Subjective. You know what I mean? Rollo is the man. Yes, he is. Rollo's a good guy, man. He's a good person. He's a good human being. From my interactions with him, he's a good person who gives a shit. All right. So anyone has anything negative to say about Rollo, I'm going to tell you right now that I've met him in person, and it was an impacting thing for me to see because I wasn't sure. I've only known him from the internet, and I met him in person, and the amount of people who had gratitude towards him, and it wasn't a red pill event, guys. It was a different, it's like a, business thing. It was a business money making sort of event, right? It was like normal, whatever people, not red pill, manosphere, whatever guys. Okay. Women and men had, it wasn't scripted, I promise, had gratitude for how he had helped them with his writing and with his communication and stuff like that. So, and he cares about what he does, and whether you don't like him or not, that's, up to you, but I'm just telling you. And the guys I work with that some of you guys don't like, I only work with them because I know they care. I know they give a shit because I know them on a personal level. And this goes back to too, like, let's look at last night's debate. Okay. All these mud flinging, stupid internet comments going back and forth, right? People slamming on Rollo, people slamming on Destiny. He's a cuck and he's a, whatever. He's this, he's that. Sneako says, I mean, their names suck. The only criticism I have on those two guys right now is, what the hell's a Sneako? And why is your name Destiny? And okay, Destiny, your hair's blue. I don't know. Maybe I'm just old. I think you could look better, bro. And it's not even, you just need to change a little thing. Those are my criticisms. They're all in fun, though. I really don't have any criticisms of these guys. I don't know them. I will tell you, though, I mean, maybe I disagree with certain arguments and stuff. Sure. I don't know them as people. When you meet people as people, it's a lot different. All right. And that's something to remember. I think people get too lost and tied up in the brand and in the bullshit. They're not meeting each other like people. And that's problematic, And so, it's problematic. And so don't jump into that tribalism. Tribalism is another thing you guys do because your safe world theory is what it is. And so you jump, and when it comes to internet arguments, you jump onto the tribe of the person who is espousing the safe world theory you're comfortable with. And then you look from a negative bias or lens on people who say things that you're uncomfortable with. I work to not do that. It's part of human nature. It could happen to me too. In fact, I'm actually a really loyal person and a team guy. So I know I can be biased if it comes down to it. I know that I can join a team, right? And because I'm going to get my friends' backs before I get somebody else's. But objectively, though, objectively, when I'm really looking at it, I don't have a dislike for anybody. It's just the arguments, And value Paul and hit the like button. Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. I got all cheers over here. Cheers to you, man. Cheers to you. Do I use the 48 laws of power? Yes, I have an altar. And then in the morning, I conjure up one of the laws. No, I'm just kidding. It's a great book. I mean, do I use it? Well, I think, arguably those are principles that people use, whether they know they're using it or not. So, I don't really reference the book to intentionally use the 48 laws of power, but there are good lessons in there. And those lessons have been part of my programming. We'll put it like that. Okay. We'll put it like that. So anyway, I don't see a bunch of questions or anything. So you guys are right on board with this. Guys, some of you guys are, we have a high vengeance man. Oh boy. Do not shoot anything up, bro. Please. I watched Paul's stream and I went to the mall. Don't do it, please. I have enough problems with YouTube algorithms. I don't need now that happening. It's just my luck. Here I am with all these positive messages and someone takes it the wrong way. All right. So that's why it's such a popular discussion. I'm asking you guys, though, to elevate. We're going to talk even more. We're going to talk about actionable things, though, too, right? But I want you guys to elevate yourself, not to fall into programming, not to fall into tribalism. If you do, join my course and be a part of my tribe. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, of course, it feels good if you guys follow my tribe and all that. But really, though, that just feels good. The reality is, though, I do want you guys to be your own thinkers. And I want you guys to use objectivity. I want you guys to understand that the programming exists. I'm doing it now. I'm a leader in a sense, and I have ideas that I've researched, and I'm telling you about those ideas. What I'm telling you is it's up to you to accept them or not, and it's up to you to vet them out. You know what I mean? And decide. Most of you are pretty smart because I don't attract the Jerry Springer crowd too much. But we're here. Most of you guys are listening to me because you want what I'm saying to help you, to be a part of your programming. When I listen to other people, and it's because I am inviting, when I say, I mean, listen, like in terms of just communication, but I'm talking about content creators, looking at research and science. Now, working at research and science, I'm a little more objective, and I'm actually trying to decide whether I'm more or less trying to vet out whether it's good or not. But, if I'm listening to content creators or discussions or reading an author that I trust, I'm hoping, although I'm trying to be as objective as I can, I'm hoping that person is going to influence me for the better, and you are a product of who you not only hang around with, but who you interact with, and what, who you listen to and who you allow to be a part of your programming. So what I'm asking you to do is to be in charge of it. Okay. That's it. You decide what's going to be good for you to getting what you want and having that, that value for yourself, the value you perceive for yourself, whatever that means. And then being able to, provide that value into the world, because that's what makes people have meaning. That existential threat and that crisis is pretty well, tamed, we'll say, right? It's tamed by providing value to the world. When you feel like you're making that dent in that impact in other people's lives and in the world makes it a little less scary to be in, right? That existential crisis, that death anxiety. All right. So if high value man and those definitions, they really don't matter, what does matter? I want you guys to look at Brefalt's law. So Brefalt's law maintains that the female, not the male, determines all the conditions of the animal family. Where the female can derive no benefit from association with the male, no such association takes place. Today we would say relationship rather than association. Okay? So you want to understand women in the most rudimentary level. Think of Brefalt's law. Okay? It's cost versus benefit. All right? So what is she going to get from this? What's she going to benefit? And how much is it going to cost her? All right? And how much effort, which is also part of the cost, will it take? That's what she's looking for. It's a cost benefit analysis. That cost benefit analysis is more powerful than hypergamy. It's more powerful than anything else. It all boils down to that. All right? The reason why it's not straight hypergamy with chicks acting like robots, just going for the next high value guy. All right? Reason why it doesn't work that way is because there are costs involved, and then there are benefits, and then all of those are also perceived. Okay. In other words, they're subjective by her perceptions. She is going with what she thinks is going to benefit her the most and cost her the least. Right? And that's it. That's all it is. All right. Now, of course, there's a lot of nuance to that and a lot involving what is a perceived cost and a lot involving of what is a perceived benefit. That's what it boils down to. And that's why what high value man is hoping to do is cover all the bases. We're talking again, sexual market value, just to review, not just value in general. It's trying to cover all the bases of what a woman would, perceive as a promised benefit. Because again, if she's not in relationship with him, there's no benefit yet. It's the promise or potential of benefit based on the value he has, right? What does he have to give in terms of value? And so her perception of that value, right, is really the benefit that she would hope to receive from him. However, there's cost and risk. That was the other word. What are the costs and what are the risk? So if girl A, who sees herself, whether she admits it or not, as a 7, is going for guy A, who's a 10, he's a 10 in terms of the potential benefits he offers, she may not go for that. Not because he's not attractive, not because she doesn't desire him, but because she perceives possibly a loss and a cost of going for that guy. Maybe it's just the cost of rejection. And then by being rejected, now again, this is not practical, but this is psychological. The perceived rejection is so powerful that the juice isn't worth the squeeze for her to try to go with that guy. But what she could do is pre-reject him. He's not that hot. He's arrogant. He thinks he's the shit. Because if she pre-rejects him, all right, then her mate value perception in theory could be higher. At least her self-esteem is protected and her ego is protected. And so, she can have a stronger frame about her own self-esteem when she goes to bag the 8, the guy that's an 8. You get what I'm saying? That's how high value men get rejected or get looked away from lower value women because the cost or potential loss is too great. Happens all the time. For every girl who responds to Instagram, whatever guy, the athlete that drops, the mysterious athlete that drops in the Instagram girls DMs and say, I'll fly you out and pay you a bunch of money and have sex with me all weekend. And she goes, sure. And she does a sex weekend with a blue check mark. I have a blue check mark, by the way, ladies, in case you're wondering. So anyways, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I get to have this experience with him. Well, why does she do that? She perceives the benefits as outweighing the cost. That's why, and outweighing the risk. How about though, all the girls who wouldn't go do that? There's a lot of them. For every girl, and of course that guy, high value man, blue check mark athlete man, okay, he has a ton of options, so he's not noticing. However, if we're looking at it objectively, there's a lot of girls though that will reject that offer. If you ask anybody with a lot of perceived value, if they've ever been rejected by a girl before, they're all going to tell you yes. All right. Why? The cost and the risk. That's why. If I go and just bang this athlete for a weekend, and now I have that in my track record, maybe my Christian circles I run in is going to look down on me for that. Maybe my potential husband in the future isn't going to like that. Maybe my current boyfriend that I have, where I get a lot of needs from, okay, and I have an emotional attachment to, and we'll get to that part, I'm going to lose him. And I don't want to lose the benefits I get from the boyfriend just for a short-term fling with blue checkmark guy. The cost and the risk is too high. So she turns it down, right? Whereas maybe a girl goes with it because she wants the experience, she wants the fun, she wants the bragging rights more than anything else. It isn't about the sex. It isn't about, when a girl does that for a weekend, it's so she can perceive herself as higher value. Now, of course, it's a lie, because she's only going to be perceived as short-term mate valuable. In other words, slut. Okay. She's not going to be perceived. In fact, it works against her for a perception of long-term mate value. And that's what a lot of women don't understand when they make those dumb decisions, right? Is that the benefit they think they'll get from the clout of being with a high value man for a weekend ends up working against them if they try to have relationships with other high value men that are more matching, you know, we'll say an SMV where she's at, or would be willing to want to be with her long term, you know, provided if wasn't for some of her experiences that she chooses to do, right? So Brevard's law, that's what it boils down to. Okay. Is it when it in terms of a woman selecting a man, but really it just really it is a perceived, for you guys too, though, it is the same, although I'm not going to get in the weeds of evolutionary reasons and eggs and sperm and all that stuff, why women tend to be the selectors. Okay. I have other shows that have dedicated to that. But really all you guys need to know though, is that it's all about cost and benefit, you know, or you know, so what's the benefit versus what is the risk and what is the loss, you know? And by the way, some of the benefits actually potential too. So I should say it's more potential. What's the potential benefits? That's why she'll go with a guy. Why she goes on a date with a guy is for potential benefits. She hasn't received those benefits yet. A guy's SMV is demonstrating potential benefits, right? But there's also risk and cost involved. And that's why in the seduction matrix, I talk about being sexually open or closed, and I talk about tension, and I talk about comfort. And when she perceives risks, that tension builds. Some risks are good, right? If she's worried about losing them or being embarrassed or being alpha widowed, it's not something, girls don't use that word, that terminology, but there's a natural propensity to not want to meet a guy and have her heart broken, right? So that's a risk, isn't it? You know? And so when the risk goes up, it's a lot of times because the potential benefits go up, and that's when she becomes more sexually open and the tension rises. But if the tension gets too much, then she becomes sexually closed because the benefits are being outweighed by the potential risk involved, right? Or the potential loss. So, I've been on the receiving end of girls who have been weighing out the risk reward versus being with me in a short-term fling versus, not cheating on their partners. Sometimes I was aware of that. Sometimes I wasn't. I don't recommend that you go with girls who are in long-term relationships. There's plenty of women out there, so that's not a prescription. But having seen that and experienced that at different parts of my life, I can literally see them doing this cost benefit analysis sort of in their head and trying to figure it out. This guy really turns me on, and I really want to have this desiring experience with him. Oh, but I got this guy I've been seeing though, and he is a lot safer and offers a lot of other potential that seems safer. I go with this guy, he might not care about me because he's got a lot of options with women, but I go with this guy here that I've been seeing, or, whatever. I might, I have more propensity of controlling the guy I have at home to get what I want. And so maybe the risk is too high, or maybe it's not. They're just, that builds tension for them. Okay. I've seen it happen. Watched it in real time. All right. So peeking at the chat. What's this recommendation here? Thank you for arguing. The Art of Persuasion by Jay Heinecker may be a better one for, okay. Yeah, I think I've read that one. That's a good one, actually. And how to win. Yeah, how to win every argument and use and abuse logic. Interesting. And then I got a guy trying to correct my pronunciation of Brefalt. Brefa. Whatever. I'm not French. So probably neither is the word, but who knows? All right. So let's continue, right? So it's a value exchange, and that's subjective. And emotions are a huge part of that, which is why game is so important. Because what game and frame does is it biases her emotions in a positive way so that she sees you as higher value. That's why. And when when a girl is in desire for you and happy about you, she sees you as higher value. She sees your value as a man and as a mate value, right? Your mate value and your value in general. She sees it as higher. And when she's upset with you, mad at you, right? Or you're doing unattractive things because your game isn't good, then she starts to see you as low value. Your actual value, however, hasn't changed. And this is why game and this is why frame is so important in relationships, because women are not robots. Okay. And you guys aren't either. We have emotions, and those emotions are there, and they've evolved the way that they have. So they allow us to be protected and to survive, and for our offspring to survive, even though those emotions tend to be and can be counterproductive at times, right? They are actually designed, though, to protect you. And having an emotional attachment brings huge benefits to a man or to a woman in terms of their overall potentiality for success, protecting resources, and having a family, rearing children. So those emotions are there for a reason. They're part of who you are. You can't remove that. We can't robotically put lists out there for market value and this and that and analyze things through using evolutionary psychology principles and basically an economic model of the sexual marketplace. I mean, those are useful, right? But we can't remove emotions from that equation, which is why things don't run straight along an equation. Okay. People's subjective perceptions make all the difference in the world for any of this stuff. And so your game and your frame and your seduction skills, the thing I train a guy on for a year, that is the key to your success in any of your relationships with women. And women, you too, your way of interacting with a guy and having that emotional exchange is the key to this success, even for a woman. Okay. A guy will stick with a woman because of his emotional buy-in, his emotional attachment, even when that woman's not good for him anymore, at least for a while. And women will stick with guys who start to become more of a cost and more of a risk than a benefit because of the emotional attachment. Now, when I say that, though, I'm talking an objective risk or benefit. I'm not talking about, so objectively, everybody else looks at it and says, this is costing you and causing you a lot more risk than the reward you're getting. But she does not perceive that. She may logically go, yeah, you're right. And then she goes back into the relationship because her perceptions are emotionally based, and her perceptions are that she is feeling these emotions and there are more of a benefit and more maybe of a potential. Remember, potential is part of it too, not just benefits in real time. There's more potential for her to stick around on this guy who's bringing her all kinds of risk and all kinds of, problems, all kinds of cost. And so girl will stick it out on the hope and on the potential in a toxic relationship where she's not benefiting, objectively not benefiting. However, her perceptions are that I'm going to benefit into the future, or I am benefiting in some ways because my emotions skew me in that direction. My attachments tell me that. All right. Now, I'm not telling you guys to be toxic and offer no value to a woman and just game her. And certainly I'm not telling women who, by the way, on both sides, men and women do this all the time, where they're detriment to their partners, but they get them emotionally wrapped up. And that's what keeps them around. That is not my prescription. That's certainly not what I'm teaching you to do. However, that explains that, though. Now you understand the emotional component and the attachments that are designed more or less to protect us and protect our species, okay, play a massive role in our perceptions of value, which is why a list is pretty useless for you when it comes to high value man, high value woman. It's pretty useless. You got to learn about what your partner is benefiting and perceives as benefits. You got to be willing to reduce the risk and cost, or perceived risk and cost, for your partner. And you want to create an emotional connection. Holy shit. An emotional connection. Imagine that. Right. When you have the emotional connection with your partner, that protects you. The grass is not greener on the other side of your relationship. Probably. Okay. Unless you made a bad choice. If you made a good choice, let's go on that assumption. The grass isn't greener. All right. When you're just in a negative bias, or your partner's in a negative bias because your game sucks and your seduction skills suck, and you don't know how to get your partner to be in an emotional attachment with you, you don't know how to have that exchange with her, that emotional exchange where you guys have a healthy attachment building. When you don't have that, when shit goes wrong in the relationship, she starts to see you in a negative bias. The potential cost and the potential risk start to weigh in her head. And those things grow subjectively in her head more than the perceived value and potential that you have. And then what does she do? She will exit the relationship eventually, right? When she perceives that the risk and that the cost is greater than the benefit or the potential, she is out. She's gone. That's it. She's exiting the relationship. The process of exiting the relationship is the process of ruling out whether or not the risk or the cost is too great for any of the benefits I might receive from him. I need out. and she's gone, or he's gone for that matter, right? But how often are those perceptions wrong? All the time. Why? Because of emotions. Okay. All the time, women, especially women with attachment issues, especially women with like personality disorders, what do? They devalue their partner. They perceive their partner as lower and lower value, as being a bigger risk and a bigger cost to being with, and it not offering and not having, they have no gratitude. This is why I say it's very dangerous to choose a woman who doesn't have gratitude in her life, because and who doesn't have forgiveness. Those are the two things. You want some concrete advice right now? Pick women who have forgiveness and gratitude as just a part of who they are, and they've developed that, because she's any perceived wrongs or any perceived, whether you actually made a mistake or whether it's just her perceptions, a woman who has no forgiveness, she's going to hold on to that. She's going to hold on to the things you've done wrong and let those add up in her head so that she can perceive the risk and perceive the loss as greater than the potential and the benefit. If she has no gratitude, she's not perceiving benefits. She's taking those benefits for granted. How many guys put a thumbs up, or girls put a thumbs up or a one, put a one in the chat right now, or whatever. If you have been with somebody who devalued you and who didn't have any gratitude for what you've done, and then the relationship broke and then they regretted it afterwards. How many of you have had that? All right. I'm not very good at igniting my audience. I don't have anybody putting a one. So it's never happened to anybody, I guess. Seriously. There we go. There's a bunch of ones. There we go. Me too. I'm putting a 1 too. All right. Why does that happen? There's just a delay on it. So a bunch of guys participating. Thank you. Thank you for humoring me. Why does that happen? That happens because of emotions and perceptions, and it is subjective. And that's what matters. And this is why game is so important. This is why seduction skills are so important. This is why communication, but we're not talking just any old communication. We're talking about communication on an emotional level with your partner. That's why that's so damn important. All right. There was a super chat here. T Diamond, thank you very much. What do you think about swinging? Oh man, do it all the time. No, I'm just kidding. It's like, how do you appropriately introduce the concept to a partner? Can you ever stop once you start? I don't recommend swinging. I don't. What do I think about it? I don't recommend it. The reason I don't recommend it is because what you're doing is partner switching. And I understand this is just my opinion, and I'll give you my argument behind why I think it's a bad prescription. I think it's a bad prescription, but to each his own, okay? But I think it's a bad prescription, and here's why. I think that for a girl to be happy in the frame of, to be happy in a relationship and with her partner, okay? When I say happy, I mean, and this is actually getting to a point that I'm about to get to in the discussion, which is the 13%. All right. I think that's the right number. 13% of people after the 8-year mark, according to some pretty good research, can report happiness in their relationships. The rest are reporting some level of unhappiness. And 6% are reporting being in absolute bliss. Okay. So only 6% are reporting being at the highest level of bliss, according to a questionnaire that cleverly asks questions about the relationship. So it's not just a yes or no answer where people can, ego protect and lie on the survey, right? So asking some cleverly put together questions to determine, okay, who from the answers of these questions scales in the highest of happiness, bliss, they called it 6%. There are like 6 categories. And so 6% only met that category after 8 years. And the reason why they use after 8 years is because 2 years is not really considered a long-term relationship yet. It's just, you're really just getting started. They figure that past the 8-year mark, that's when like divorces and stuff start to go down, and that potential of breakup starts to go down. People still break up, sure, after the 8-year mark, but more breakups happen within the first 2 years. The next milestone is within the next 7 years, 7 or 8 years. So they went from 8 years on. There's some logic and reasoning behind that to determine, okay, these are long-term partners that probably are going to stay together for at least a while, and even and they all varied. Some were just at the 8-year mark, some were at 15 or 20 years. It didn't matter. It was just past that mark. And so with the sample, and only 13% were happy. The next category from bliss was generally pretty happy. They're not quite bliss, but they're pretty good. And then below that was all levels of unhappiness, right? You would consider them, well, he's okay, but she's all right, but, well, things are, I love her, but I love him, but, right? I'm not really that happy. I care about the person, not happy. Okay. So what do we got to do to be that top 13%? That's the question that successful people ask. What do I need to do to be the minority of people that are successful? If I want a blissful relationship, that's long-term, then I need to think about what the 6% people do, not just focus on the bottom, let's say the worst category, the bottom 20% or something that are miserable, right? And go 20% of people are miserable in relationships, and then focus on that, and then go, cut my dick off or whatever, like stupid shit, like, or just spin plates, bro, or whatever. No, I'm going to look at, if I want a long-term relationship, I'm going to look at what are the 6% doing, unfortunately a study doesn't tell us that, but I'm doing a lot of, research myself, and there's a lot of other things out there to determine those things. We know what not to do. We know a lot about what to do. And we will say, that, and this is part of my discussion, this 13% thing, the what to do to be happy was very individualized after a while. There's certain common things like communication didn't follow certain toxic patterns, for example. So that's a big one, right? We can eliminate toxic communication patterns. We know we have higher propensity of success. But, what worked for one couple versus another couple? In other words, what one couple saw as valuable versus another couple, that started to get very nuanced, right? And so that goes back to finding your good match. Like, this is like kind of basic shit maybe your grandparents told you. You know what I mean? But then we got off the rails and we thought we were smarter than everybody else that came before us. And we are in some ways, but then unfortunately too much data makes people stupid. All right. We got to go back to some basic concepts here. Sometimes an individual matchup is just a better match for you than another one because those little nuances matter. Okay. But certain principles, though, are going to set you up for failure. Now back to the question, swinging. That's a principle there that's going to set you up for failure. And this is not going to be liked very much by people with more feminist leaning ideas or people who focus a lot on equality, which isn't something that actually exists in the real world. All right. There is no equality when it comes to the sexes. I'm going to say that right now. And I'm getting into swinging. There's a reason why I'm saying that. So we are evolutionarily designed for men especially men who have resources and have the ability to take care of needs of multiple women. We're evolutionarily designed for a man to have and mate with multiple women. Okay. When we were in polyamorous tribes, they were generally male driven, and most of the women, particularly during ovulation, even though they were polyamorous, gravitated towards the guys that were of the highest perceived mate value in their tribes, in their circles. That went on for a long time. And then we hit agriculture, where with agriculture, we developed city states. We were no longer hunter-gatherers. We now had towns and villages and feudal system and different systems of government running now areas with agriculture because resources became more plentiful. So we spent less time on basic needs and we're able to devote more time to other things to advance civilization, like medical care, like building structures, like, all the things that we enjoy today, right? During that time period, we consolidated that hunter-gatherer sort of sexual drive and that polyamorous drive which was, again, remember, still male driven. And ironically, polyamorous women back in our tribal times arguably didn't develop the number of notches that women do today in a global sexual marketplace, because tribes are just not that big. So they might, even being polyamorous, they might have only slept with 5 guys in their lifetime, right? Whereas in now the global sexual marketplace, you can times that by 10 easily, just with the internet, right? And with having a lot more contact with a lot more people. So anyway, we consolidated from polyamorous tribes to harem structures, where the guys with the highest perceived mate value mated with multiple women, and then the bottom 60% didn't really mate at all. Okay. And that eventually evolved because of the violence of those types of structures, which we can see in Afghanistan today. For society, those are not the best prescription, okay? Because when you have the bottom half of males not having sexual opportunity, what happens is they get aggressive. The male way of solving a problem is through aggression and coercion, okay? Like it or not, just is what it is. And so they want to achieve more status and more opportunity. This is why men in Afghanistan will join the Taliban, for example, without other opportunities or resources. It's really to have mating opportunity. It's to have social status. That's why they do that, whether they realize it or not. And so, because the women are going for the guys with the money, and in under Sharia law, guy can have 4 wives. That makes for a lot less opportunity for the lower portion of men. Monogamy was a society imposed solution to that. It allowed less marketable men to get women, essentially, is what that boiled down to, right? By having a societal structure where we pair off one man, one woman, and we try to do monogamy, even though that's never fully been successful. And maybe it's only been about 5,000 years in various different, that even got a start in society, but that's the evolution of it, right? So we're not really ingrained yet in monogamy, which is why we don't do it very well. But it's there because it tends to work better for a peaceful society and that's more or less where evolution has gone. Back to swinging though. Men can have sex and take care of several different women. A man could have his wife that he's madly in love with and have a great relationship with, and every now and then have sex with a side chick. And still, that relationship works out just fine because of the way the man's bonding mechanisms and wiring system is concerned. He can disassociate the emotional bond of sex from the casual partner, right? Better than a woman can. But because women are hypergamous, okay, they have less of an ability to do that. We know this, like, this is not a hard argument. We just know this instinctively that women, tend to think of sex more seriously. Like sex is more of an emotional experience for a girl. Like, and then you have a lot of girls nowadays going, well, I just have casual sex. It's not emotional for me. Okay. But look at the first person, look at, we know by and large that that's a kind of a, that's kind of a cap, and that's kind of maybe something a girl has developed through notches. But, originally, especially why do you think the first sex partner for a girl is so impacting? It's so impacting because we know this neurochemically. Like, there isn't an argument when you look at neurology. She gets an oxytocin bond, or she gets an oxytocin dump rather, post sexual experience with a guy, particularly even really high post orgasm. So when she has high sexual excitement for a guy, she gets the bonding chemicals. Guys get more vasopressin. So it's not that they don't bond with a woman, but they don't always get the bonding chemical exchange with casual partners in the same way. And when they do, it's a vasopressin thing, which is slightly different than oxytocin. Vasopressin kind of it evolves wanting to caretake more for the other person rather than bond with them the same way oxytocin does, right? So the emotional bond with oxytocin is a little different than at vasopressin. Both men and women get both, by the way, but it tends to be greater for women their after post-sexual experience on the oxytocin side than it is for men. We know this. So women bond sexually with men in a greater way. And so we know that women are not as geared towards variety as men. So not being as geared towards variety, the only time a woman is geared towards variety is if she is tapped into her polyamorous instincts by having a lot of notches, and that she's sort of imprinted that reward system for herself, which can happen through social conditioning, we could call it, or if the guy she's with isn't the best she can do, or at least isn't the best she's had, right? Then she loves the guy, she wants to be with him, but really she wants to get her sexual thrill somewhere else. If you go look at my cucking videos, talk about that, but that's more of a revenge thing, but that's in there. Okay. I talk about this in other videos quite a bit, actually. And so you can go in my search history and look at that stuff. But, and I talk about monogamy in some of my older videos going way back to when I was in Afghanistan, and I looked up the research and stuff on this. So yeah. So women don't bond with, or women rather bond differently through sex, or at least are designed to bond differently through sex. So when a woman wants to have sex with other dudes, well, that's triggering or imprinting the idea that the guy that she is with as a primary partner isn't really the best she can do. If the guy that's her partner isn't the best that she can do, then she's probably not going to have that deep desire for that guy in the same way that she would if she didn't desire other male sexual partners. So this is why for the guy, it's actually really dangerous for the guy, more or less. Now for the woman, hey, maybe this is a great solution if the woman has settled and married with a guy that isn't somebody that is her best in terms of attraction, but he offers her a lot of benefits. Maybe a good solution for her is to be able to bang other dudes. And this is why women push for polyamory. But the problem with that is the guy ends up just becoming a roommate. His level in that relationship is like roommate, good friend, maybe provider. I don't know. There's definitely an exchange of value there. But for a way a man is wired, okay, he has to give up something. He is not getting his needs met. Man doesn't just want sexual variety. That's not enough for a man. Let me tell you guys right now, banging through girls isn't enough. You think it is when you don't have girls, but when you start banging through girls, you recognize that banging through girls is not exactly where the evolutionary drive is. That's only part of it. What men actually want is genuine desire from a woman. Why does a man want that? What is genuine desire? He wants that woman to see him as the best sexual option. Oh, it's just the male ego. Doesn't matter. It's ingrained in males. The reason why is it's a protective measure. If she sees him as the best option, then she's not going to go kill his kids in the tribal times to go run off with another tribe or do infanticide or cuck him, right? All very real risks back in those times. So from the evolutionary psychology perspective, this is why women have the desire, and the oxytocin protects them from that versus just spreading seed like dudes. Dudes will spread seed, but they still want that girl to really love him. Right. And when I say love, I mean desire and respect, which means she's not wanting to bang other dudes. She wants to be with him only. Okay. So what I'm saying is the dude is capable of sleeping with other women and having it not harm the relationship if the woman, believes that she is having all of her needs met in that exchange. It doesn't work the other way around. Now, again, it's down to perception. So I'm not saying every woman has to let guys, accept guys banging other women. That's not what I'm saying, right? We're down to individual perceptions, remember? However, we want to look broadly evolutionarily speaking. The possibility of that being a happy relationship when that guy runs off and has sex, casual sex sometimes, is there. The possibility of the girl doing the same, not really there. Not from an evolutionary perspective, not from the way that we're wired. Okay. The guy will lose status in her eyes. The guy will lose that value in her eyes when she is banging other dudes. Even if the guy is pushing for swinger stuff, which happens a lot because guys get dumb ideas in their head and they will, because he wants to bang the neighbor's wife, and and neighbor's wife wants to bang his wife, and so they push their wives into it. That happens. And when that happens, even if the girl did see the guy as the best, what is happening is she's being pushed more or less into the act of enjoying sex with someone else. So the environment ends up stimulating in her brain that the guy that she thought was the best maybe is not. So it starts to strip away at the frame in the relationship. The relationship works to be the 6%, okay, of happiness. And maybe with some problems, they venture into that 13 percentile, all right? The top 13%, maybe, but to be in that at least 13%, particularly if you're going for absolute bliss in a long-term relationship, being a swinger or being polyamorous is not the prescription, because the guy will lose value in her eyes. She will lose, if she saw him as the best, right? And it wasn't just her lying to herself, or which women unfortunately do a lot when it comes to attraction. If she saw him as the best, she won't anymore. Not over time of sleeping with other people. So it's triggering and imprinting sexual enjoyment from other men, which will inevitably be different from the guy she's with. And then it starts to strip away at that frame, right? If she's the one pushing for it, desiring that, guaranteed the guy she's with is not her sexual best, period. Okay, that's one most probable thing. The other possible thing is that she has wrecked her ability to bond with that oxytocin through multiple partners and experience and maybe some trauma. And so she can't bond sexually in the same way, like maybe some of our porn stars that get married, stuff like that. So her bond to her husband or her guy is different. But from the guy perspective, it's not fulfilling his evolutionary imperative, which is to captivate all of her desire, right? To protect himself and his paternity. His gorilla brain wants to captivate all of her desire, all right? We start to get into bisexuality and, homosexuality. Women are more fluid in their sexuality because of this harem structure. So very common, bringing other girls in, having threesomes, stuff like that can enhance a relationship. If it doesn't fit your Christian or Muslim values, I'm not saying that you should go do that. Okay. There may be reasons you don't want to. That's totally fine. Remember, individual happiness. That's what matters. However, back to possibility, a guy can have a harem or a soft harem where he has his main girl, and then occasionally they bring in casual partners together. She enjoys the casual partners with him, right? Or they both do in some way, shape, or form. Clear boundaries are set. That can be okay and be in play for people reaching maybe that 6%, right? But that's 6% of bliss. But if she's banging other guys, you're not looking at that. If she is having sex with other guys, that relationship is going to be in the bottom part of that equation, the unhappiness. There's going to be some degree of unhappiness. At best, they can hope for or settle for is, we're all right. We're mostly good, but, right? Meaning we're not really happy, but we're getting along. A lot of guys settle for that. Most guys do, in fact. Most women do. But I'm not here to tell you or to give you prescriptions or to help you to settle, man or woman. I'm here to help you have the bliss relationship, the best relationships you can have, The best short-term ones, if that's what you're doing right now, the best long-term ones, if that's what your goal is, that's what you want. That's what I'm here for. So when you ask me, what do I think about swinging? I'm going to give you an answer from that perspective. Now, are there couples out there that swing and they're perfectly happy? Whatever. Sure, probably, maybe. Will that fall apart? Probably. Okay. Statistically speaking, swinger relationships do not last as long as relationships where they don't do that. Okay. That being said, though, hey, are there individual things? Sure. Do I think that from the evolutionary level, though, an imperative that that the man in the swinging relationship is basically having to settle somewhere in his ingrained mating drives? He is having to accept something he really doesn't want, and then he has to come up with all of the reasons behind it. Yeah, I think he does. I think he has to basically settle with less than what he would truly want. And for the girl, I would argue it's the same, because it's really just a coping mechanism for not seeing the guy that she's with as the best that she could ever do in 5 categories that are important. And actually, I'm going to get into those 5 categories in a second. But do men not weigh risk and reward? Sarah, yes. Yes, both men and women do. Brevard's law defers to women because it's in the animal kingdom. That's when it's leaning to the idea that women are the deciders of sex because they have the eggs and they're the ones who carry babies. So they're more selective, right? Where guys will, have indiscriminate sex more or less. But I would argue, yeah, that both men are weighing risk and reward for sure. I would argue, though, that women are just more selective, and they tend to be more the selectors, where men are just more opportunists. In other words, men are looking for the opportunities for sex, and most men don't have a lot of opportunities. Most men are scarce, believe it or not, when it comes to opportunities. Now, Sarah here being a woman, if you're, I don't know what you look like, and it's not that important, but just if you're an attractive enough woman, you have a lot of options for sex. So from your perspective, that may seem weird, right? But if you think about it, there's a lot of guys out there who just don't have those options. There's not a lot of women that are going to say yes to them because they're lacking in certain areas. And so and that's really most men. This bottom 80% really. And so the bottom 80% of men, have a mentality or a mindset of scarcity with women. And so they're opportunist. They're waiting for girls to say yes. And so they're shooting their shots. And even in relationships, unfortunately, they're cheating on their partners or hoping to cheat. A lot of guys are only not cheating because they don't have opportunity. That's the unfortunate reality, right? Yeah, so women tend to be the selectors, and that's why Brevard law, puts the female at the helm. But I would argue, just for relationships in general, it is a risk reward thing for sure. It's a perceived benefit and perceived, potential in exchange for the perceived reward. I would argue it's that way for both men and women. So that's a good point. Let's see. We got all our ones. Cool. What's worse when they get a new girl and oh yeah. What else we got here? I would say their swinging is not acceptable, Ranger. What standards are you going on? You got to go straight up and down pull-ups. It's the only way. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I'm sorry. I'm looking through these chats, seeing if there's anything. What are more green flags? I'm not going to cover that right now. Did I fire Glenn? No. Glenn and I are still our friends. He's not fired. Glenn's not he's not fired. It's the platform. The platform is not streaming in the higher quality that I'd like it to. StreamYard streams in higher quality. And that platform was coming in like the post recording was just coming in really, really fuzzy and low quality. So that's why we're not using that platform. We'll probably get together again and figure that out, or figure out a different platform. Let's see. All right, so we got lots of conversations. All right, because what is this one? Because monogamy is honored, work ethics more than grifting or pure inherited power, it was successful. For example, in feudal Japan, farmers were valued higher than merchants. Well, society does honor monogamy in certain societal circles, sure. Yeah. Like if you look at traditional conservatives, they admire monogamy more than a guy who's womanizing or a girl who's sleeping with a bunch of dudes. For sure. You know? And this, let me answer this question real quick. I don't know if that's real Cappy or fake Cappy right now. But because we got those fake accounts. But you know what? Pair bonding is misdefined. That's the problem, is that pair bond. So what pair bonding actually is, when you look at the scientific literature and the science behind it, is a neurochemical bonding. Okay. So during sex and mating, do the animals get a neurochemical result from that makes them want to continue to select that same partner? That's what pair bonding is. That's all it is a neurochemical connection. Does this person receive the oxytocin and vasopressin, stimulation in exchange with this other person during sex? Okay, if so, that is what pair bonding is. It's misdefined because what you had was what we could call blue-pilled scientists in neurology, right? With a lot of mythology about monogamy and women and all this stuff, maybe without the benefit of evolutionary psych and other things we know today, determining how we bond on a neurological level. The word pair bonding got used, and then it got attributed to bonding for life. You know what I mean? In other words, like, oh, well, with this chemical exchange, now those two are going to bond forever. And so then you look at, voles or whatever, that tend to bond for their lifetime, right? With certain animals, they bond for a lifetime because that chemical exchange is imprinted and it's very high, right? But there are other animals in the animal kingdom that prefer certain mates, but that chemical exchange isn't so high or imprinted, and they will go through other partners in their lifetime. Human beings were one of them. In other words, we can have a strong neurochemical exchange with somebody, feel bonded to them after sex, and not want to exchange partners, because guys get less oxytocin. Guys are always going to look at ass. That's just what we do, right? That doesn't mean we don't have the vasopressin and the bond for our female partner. Guys a lot of times will always come home to their wives, for example, even if they are catching the eye of, the bartender after work or something, right? And so that's why. Okay, but this is why. So bonding is real, and it's true, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. And that neurochemical bonding is compromised through a lot of things that could happen to a girl in her past, right? Whether it's high notches or traumatic experiences or, abusive relationships or attachment problems and so on and so on. It can pollute or skew that bonding reaction that should happen during a sexual exchange. But the bonding is there. That's real. They just call it pair bonding. But I would say that it's a misdefinition by internet people of what pair bonding actually is, which is they want to believe it's like, bonding for life, like, oh, we're penguins and I found my soulmate. That's not really what it is. It's just a neurochemical exchange. All right. And so yeah. That woman lied to you. I love it. I feel like you are the real Aaron Cleary. I want to come visit you, dude. Just FYI. I want to get out west soon. And I am also a purple dinosaur. So that's good. I'm glad we can all, what is that, Bernie? I don't know. All right. So let's finish this thing. Let's go through this stuff. All right. So what's a prescription, guys? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What's the rules for life? All right. Well, y'all have your subjective opinions of what's important to you. Now, I want you to understand a couple of things about value, though. And if you want to have strong frame, you're never looking to the woman you love for your perceived value as a man. Here's why that is. Okay. And I've said this before. First of all, you have your value as a man that's independent of women. And so that's the value you provide to the world. That has nothing to do with your sexual market value. If a guy, let's say, is really good at computer programming and he's impacting the world with that skill set, it might not help him very much or raise his perceived value with women, but it doesn't really matter, right? He has value in his life. He's important. He needs to stay alive. He needs to keep doing his work. And so for all you men out there listening, you need to separate your sense of value as a man from what the opinion of women are. Okay. You need to separate your sexual market value or your mate value from your value in general, and know that you're valuable and have a purpose in life that you're trying to achieve that is along the lines of value to the world, that is independent of women. If it attracts women, great. And if it doesn't, great. It doesn't matter. All right. And that is so important. That is the difference between guys losing their lives or gaining their lives after breakups. All right. That is the difference between being happy, generally speaking, and needing a woman around to be happy. We all know that if you need a woman around to be happy, that there's a deficit inside of you. Your frame is going to be off. You're going to be less attractive and less mentally and emotionally stable. Okay. Why are you relying on some dumb girl's emotional thinking? No offense, ladies, and her bad mating decisions and poor mating decisions throughout her life to be the determination of your value as a man? That would be crazy. All right. So whatever you perceive your value is, which is your contribution or ability to contribute to the world and your purpose, that is separate from any woman's opinion, even if it's someone who loves you. Okay. That's really important. Why is that so important? Because when you get down to the individual relationship, whether it's short or long term, that woman is going to have an emotional bias based on how she perceives your sexual market value. All right. And your general value as a man. And so when she's happy with you, you're the best guy in the world. Right. If she's not so happy with you and you guys are fighting, maybe she sees you as a crappy human being and sees you as lower value. Right. If you get in the wrong kind of relationship with maybe a woman with toxic tendencies and a negative bias all around about the world and a lack of gratitude and a lack of forgiveness, what happens? She devalues you. She tries to make you think you're a piece of crap. All right. And unfortunately, you guys will believe it because you're actually in your girl's frame and you're not holding frame because you're basing your sense of value on how she perceives you. You can't do that. So your frame as a man is to understand your value and your worth as a man, independent of her and anyone else. Sexual market value. So sexual market value is the thing that's different than your value to the world. Your value as a man to the world. All right. And that's women too, by the way. Your value as a woman. So some women, let's say there's a woman out there who's a doctor who saves lives every day. That woman is valuable to the world. Okay. That does only so much for her sexual market value. And actually, for that woman who's a doctor, unfortunately, that doesn't do for your sexual market value what it would do for a man who's a doctor, because men and women select differently. We're going to get into that. Okay. And women hate that, but instead of hating it, embrace it and learn what men actually like. Imagine that. Feminism is trying to make women turn to men, and then they get mad when men don't have the same mating criteria. Stupid, right? But your personal value isn't based on what a bunch of women, or for my female listeners, a bunch of men think about you. It's how you're contributing to the world. That woman's a good mom or whatever, that's value she has. If she's a good friend, that's value she has. If she's got a great career and all that stuff, that's value she has. But that's not necessarily value in terms of sexual market value. It's not necessarily value to her individual partner. Could be, could not be, right? But that's value that every human being should embrace. And so every human being should seek out healthy self-esteem independent of a partner through their purpose. Now, sexual market value, that is the perception in general of a bunch of different women, okay, in your, in your circles. Do women in general see you as attractive? All right. Or do they not? That's your SMV. That's your sexual market value to women, is how do they see you? All right. Why do I want you to pay attention to that? Because when you're in that individual relationship and that woman's trying to treat you like you're unattractive because she's mad at you or because she's having an emotional moment or whatever it may be, okay? Or that girl you went on a date with turns out to be kind of a crappy person and she, discards you or whatever. You're not basing your mate value, which, by the way, that would be an existential threat to you. It'd feel like a death if your mate value is down to zero. You're not basing that mate value based on one opinion from one girl. You want to look at the opinions of girls in general and how women perceive you and whether or not, depending on their preferences, they'd see you as attractive. Has nothing to do with your self-worth as a man, but it has everything to do with the perceptions of value by women and whether or not they're going to want to date you or have sex with you, whatever, right? And so you want to look at that in a general sense. If you know you're attracted to women and your girl is acting like crap and maybe discarding you and you have to break up with her, your propensity for success and your perceptions of success and your drive towards doing the right things to recover from that breakup and have a better relationship with somebody else, much better, much greater when you understand your sexual market value versus just what one person's opinion is. Okay. And so you want to do the things that will make your sexual market value go up because that will benefit the individual partner you're with, but it'll also give you an understanding of your own value independent of your partner, which is a requirement as a man if you're going to have frame. Okay. So now that we've covered that, all right, let's talk about perceptions. And I've had this discussion in other things. I vetted this out through research. This is not an unresearched opinion. So here's what the actual, like, her monkey brain perceives as a need. All right. Take some water here. So her monkey brain perceives as a need. Sex, the sexual exchange, sexual desire, that's your genetic attractiveness, how attracted she is to you, okay? Just for the raw, experience of sex with you. That's one primal need. The emotional connection, emotional draw, wanting to feel drawn to you. Generally, that's a feeling of respect and, in desire, and also safety to a degree, like feeling emotionally comfort towards you because of your strength. By the way, emotional comfort from a woman happens because of your strength and also because of your, ability to accept her and offer her that comfort, right? So you're strong as well, though. Guys who simp for women, guys who, kiss a girl's ass, all that stuff, that doesn't build the same emotional connection for her. Okay. It builds up her self-esteem, but it doesn't build her emotional connection to you. You being, what we could say, the alpha male, right? You being that strong male in her life, that's what builds that. And sex and emotion are directly tied in because there's a chemical component there. The third thing is security. Security falls in kind of an alpha or beta category, to use those container words. All right. Security could mean your ability to beat ass and protect. Security also means your ability to get resources, which is more of an alpha thing. And security means your willingness to spend the resources on her, which is a little bit more of a comfort thing, a little bit more of a beta thing, right? And it's not to say it's beta to spend money on your girl, but it's more of a comfort signal, right? She's looking at paternity, meaning, are you a good dad? Good dad qualities. Okay. Being caring, nurturing, all those things, you know, being, funny, being emotionally controlled. Like these are all things that would make you a good dad. Why does a girl look at a hot dude with a puppy as being attractive? And she goes, "Ah, why? Because he's sending paternity signals." All right. That's a primal monkey brain need for a woman. And another primal monkey brain need is legacy. That is not just your loyalty, but it's the ability for her to keep you. Are you the type of guy she could build a life with long term, or are you going to discard her for another model? Right? Your integrity and your loyalty signal legacy, um, future planning, trying to build a life, doing the relationship thing. Those are all legacy signals. But also, legacy needs kind of boil down to her too. Does she feel like, does she have high enough self esteem and high enough confidence in her market value to be able to keep you? That's a legacy thing as well, right? And so those 5 things are primal needs. You want to know if you're sexually marketable to a woman or women in general. You need to convey the promise of those 5 things. If you're sexually attractive, you go to the gym, you work on yourself or whatever, you're seductive with a woman, you're calibrated, the way that you maneuver and lead, physical touch, your tone of voice, things of that nature, that those things all convey, right? How you physically interact with a woman prior to getting in the bedroom convey what that you positively or negatively, whether or not you will be a good sexual partner for her, and provide her a good sexual experience, right? The emotional exchange, right? Being that dominant force in her life that's willing to lead her, right? All those things, handling arguments, appropriately, which means not arguing, but handling communication well. That builds the emotional bond. That emotional bond biases her to quite a degree. Making money. Okay. Why is that good? Because money can provide security, right? Both on the comfort as well as the alpha side of it. And, being physically fit and being a capable man, just being capable implies you could protect her. Women sometimes when they realize a guy can't protect her will get turned off immediately and then they'll start to discard him. Keep that in mind. Would you be a good dad? Those nurturing qualities, as that sort of thing. That's important, Um, and do you have that signal of, do you mean what you say? Do you have integrity? Would you have loyalty? Those sorts of things. These are all things that fit into her primal needs. Now, where a girl is at in her stage of life will determine whether one of those or 2 of those needs is more valuable to her in that moment than another one. A girl on vacation looking to have vacation sex is going to lean more towards genetic attractiveness, right? To supply her sexual needs. And she's going to care a lot less about paternity or legacy signals. A girl who is in her 40s or 50s, let's say a girl who's in her 50s, who's been widowed or divorced, she's going to be looking for legacy as probably a primary driver. Is this somebody I could grow old with? And maybe some security signals too. Like she doesn't want to go with it's reasonable that a woman in her 50s doesn't want to go with a guy who's financially unstable if she has financial stability, right? Because, those needs are in the forefront now. And so women are unaware that these 5 operating needs are happening at the same time to some degree in their hindbrain. Without this lecture, they don't necessarily know that's the case, which is why their attraction signals and cues can be so confusing. They could find themselves being drawn to a guy for something that they wouldn't even think about. And it's not all just sex, you know what I mean? It could be some other signal. And so when we look at these 5 things, we can kind of determine, well, what are some things that I would want to work on in order to be a viable mate to women in general, to increase my mate value. And if my mate value is up, well, then I have more options to get into that individual relationship that's actually matters. And then I'm looking at, hey, do our lifestyle fit together? Does she see me as the best sexual partner? ultimately, hypergamy, okay, means for her to have maximal potential of happiness, to be in that 6%, she needs to see you as the best option for all 5 of these things. Now, that doesn't, for those of you slow thinkers, that doesn't directly translate to, well, she's going to go for the richest guy, for example, because a guy who makes $100,000 a year, for example, might be able to give her a sense of security to the same degree as a guy who makes 500,000. So after a certain point, maybe her security needs are met, and then she's met because of how she feels about the guy, not because of what his bank account looks like. Although the bank account will help, she won't necessarily pick $500,000 a year guy over $100,000 a year guy if $100,000 a year guy makes her feel more secure, and that's important to her, right? If that's in the forefront of her mind, she may go for the lower earner, but with a higher sense of comfort and security with that guy. You see, that's why hypergamy is not a straitjacket, as Rollo says, or a straight line. And that's why the criticisms of hypergamy are correct, because people in the red pill world don't look at hypergamy the right way, because they're missing the subjective nature of this. They're missing the fact that one girl might want the genetic alpha for sex, and then another girl might be looking for a legacy partner or someone to have kids with. And so she's looking at paternity before the other ones. But the trick is, if she doesn't satisfy all of these to the fullest, believing that the person she settled with for a long-term relationship can supply all of these needs, all 5: sex, emotion, security, paternity, legacy, all of those to the maximum of what her experience is and what her expectations are. If she doesn't believe her partner could max out in all of those for her, she will be unsatisfied, and she will be looking for, she won't be in that 6%, put it that way. She may stay with the guy, right? Why? Perfault's law. That's why. Risks versus reward, potential or benefits versus risk or reward. So for example, that 55-year-old woman that settles with a guy who isn't her sexual best might be fine for both of them, because she's going to get her security needs met, her legacy needs met. They're not going to have kids. She likes them. They get along. Sex isn't the greatest she's ever had, but she's 55. She doesn't care as much. You know what I mean? Same with him. He's getting sex. He doesn't really care. He doesn't think about it. Maybe 70-year-old, right? To look at 70-year-olds. Seriously, look at that. They just don't care about, maybe sex is low on the priority, right? For them, because they don't have the drive at 75 or something, right? And maybe just having a legacy partner, someone that they can feel connected to, feel really have a different feeling of love for at that age, is more important to them than, is he the best alpha I could be with? That doesn't matter to them. All right. So different stages, different things will be important and can lead to their happiness, but it's ultimately settling. The woman who is settled with a guy at 70 that meets her legacy needs, meets her security needs, but she's not quite as emotionally drawn to, and the sex isn't as good as maybe, let's say, her husband that died when she was, let's say she had a husband that died early when she was in her 40s, right? She won't see that guy as the best that she can do. She effectively settled. She would rather be with her husband if he was still alive, but he's not still alive. So she's going to settle with this guy who's he's a good guy. And this guy maybe deep down inside knows that and just doesn't care. Doesn't feel like he has a lot of options. They've settled. What's their relationship going to be like? Not 6% bliss. They might be relatively happy. All right. I would be a push to say in that 13%, usually without that emotional buy-in. There's some things about their partner that's going to annoy them, right? The negative bias steps in. They may be relatively happy. They may be in a high scale of unhappiness, right? They're not miserable, all right? But they're not going to be 6%. So if you want to be in that top tier relationship, that girl can't be settling in any of these categories, or she won't feel it, and that she won't show up for you in the same way. Now, what about the girl, though? What's the primal needs for the guy? So the guy wants sex. The guy wants the guy wants her unbending, unyielding desire. That's what the guy wants, which involves then frequent sex and really, we could say high, intensity sex for him. So he gets the quality from her. She is ready to do whatever he wants. She is excited about it, and she wants to do it often. That's what that's what he gets. Primal need for the dude is sex. And for her to be attractive, he wants to have their attractiveness to be there, and the frequency and quality. And the quality is determined by her desire and her reactions towards him. All right. That's what a guy needs. That's a primary need for a guy in a relationship to be happy. And that has to be sustained throughout the relationship. And then emotion. He needs to feel like that woman respects him, and that woman looks up to him, has some awe for him. That's respect, and having that, that awe that this is really a good man, and having that desire. That's what translates to a man's primal brain as love. Okay. Her wanting to take care of him like another child or something isn't really it. You know what I mean? Her going, oh, like pitying him. I really love him. It's so sad that he's such a weak person. Like that's not what a guy wants. Guy wants her to have that primal, deep respect and draw and desire for him. And it's not just sexual, but it's just that emotional thing where he can be, to some degree, we'll say vulnerable. And I'm not suggesting you guys emote on your women and, and that, but if the guy can, relax a little bit, you know what I mean? He can show sides of him he doesn't show the rest of the world. And she's not going to see him as weaker or reject that, because her bias is so positive towards him because of her desire and respect that she has. Right. That's where a guy wants. Guy wants that. And he wants a woman that makes him feel like that, makes him feel comfortable, tells him, hey, I'm proud of you. You're doing a good job, not because he's a kid, but because, she awes him. And wow, you're so smart. You're so capable, like feeds his ego a little bit, not just because he's got a weak ego or something. Guys with a lot of self-esteem still want their partner to have that desire and respect and to demonstrate that. Women today are handicapped when it comes to that thing. They don't want to demonstrate that. It's ridiculous. Showing good maternal qualities, which is feminine qualities. Okay. Making other people feel good, being agreeable. All right. That's something that a lot of women nowadays in the West are not doing very often. Okay. Not being a boss bitch. That's not attractive to a guy that doesn't, bring the guy value. Demonstrating those feminine qualities. That's what's going to attract a guy, because that demonstrates she will be a good mom. And even if they're not going to have kids, she'll still be good to him, right? She'll be conscientious and agreeable. Conscientiousness and agreeableness, high on that scale. That's femininity. That signals maternal qualities. Okay, a guy wants that. A guy wants a woman that is willing to compliment him, meaning doing things to make his life easier, right? Why? Because the guy is out protecting and getting resources. His monkey brain says that we're supposed to be doing. Whether he's doing that or not doesn't matter, but the monkey brain is like, we need to protect and get resources. And he wants women around him that are going to make that easier for him, by taking care of things for him, by helping him, right? By, cleaning and cooking, like all the stuff that, feminist women hate to hear about, but it's true. You know what I mean? Those traditional roles exist because of our biology. Whether that is actually the role that the two are playing in the household is a whole different story, right? And there's different ways a woman can complement a guy's life. If a guy is a stay-at-home dad, she can still complement his life, right? And he can, there's things he can provide and frame he can provide. Even he can provide actually a sense of security, even though he isn't making the money. Believe it or not, this can work. Okay. Even though it's rare, more rare, and it's tougher to deal with, but it can happen. So complementing the guy's life means making the guy's life better. And then what does that also then mean? Not being a detriment to his life, not sucking his energy and time away in a non-rewarding fashion. Okay. A guy more than a woman is looking at that. And not say women never look at this, but a guy more than a woman is looking at this as a real, thing that he is weighing out for long-term relationship success. If he has a woman that has all kinds of problems and is bringing him problems constantly and sucking away his energy and time, he is less capable now of supplying her with her primal needs, let alone providing that value to the world that makes him feel valuable. So being a detriment, being a ankle weight, being an anchor, right? That's a problem when a woman is a detriment. And most guys are making a compromise between sex and detriment. You know what I mean? The sex is really good, but boy, is she toxic. She's really hot, but boy, does she suck my time and energy up, right? With these problems she has. And so that's how girls who are hot get kicked to the curb. They're too big of a detriment. It's not a draconian, Machiavellian, psychopathic thing, right? It's just simple, simple logistics of relationships and what a guy has to think about and what a guy weighs in on. And the guy's emotional buy-in is largely based on how much of a compliment that woman is to his life and how much of a detriment she is. That risk reward for the guy plays a role big time here. All right. Which is why I agreed with Sarah's comment earlier. All right. So those are the needs. What can a girl do to make her sexual market value be higher for most, for having more options with men so she can find a good partner that's a good match to increase her probability, increase her chances? Well, she can be sexually free and she can be attractive. The biggest thing for a woman starting off is to be attractive. Go to the gym and take care of yourself. Self-care. And I did a whole video on what makes a woman attractive, right? And women should look at that as well as you guys, so you understand what's driving you. So you're not picking girls based on whatever, how you feel in the moment and then finding yourself into problems, right? But if a girl is working on these things, she will be more valuable to a guy. Her sexual market value or perceived value will be higher. When she's attractive, she's perceived as higher value. When she's pleasant to be around and has those feminine qualities and agreeable and conscientious and seems to care about other people and, not, demonstrating the ability to have, we'll call pair bonding, the ability to have that emotional desire and to see that dude, her man, as the best, and to have unyielding desire for that man, right? She signals that by not being a hoe, right? When a girl's a hoe or a slut, she's signaling sex, which guys will happily take for short term, but she's not signaling an ability to have an emotional connection with a guy and a commitment. And so that becomes that red flag for that guy. So if you analyze these things and play this stuff back after the video, that will tell you everything you need to know to provide value, to be valuable in the sexual marketplace, man or woman. And then from there, we get into relationships. Now, the success of your relationship is based on three things: your sexual market value, right? Your perceived value, okay, which is gonna be perceived differently by different people, all that stuff, right? Remember, it's subjective, but we got some general rules here to follow, right? So that perceived value, money, muscles, game frame, okay. My friend John there had that sort of tagline, and that's good, right? Your mental frame, your mindset, your leadership, alpha skills, your game or communication skills, right? And seductive communication, as well as your health and physical fitness and your, financial circumstance. Those are things that will signal that you can supply those 5 needs for a woman, all right, that I mentioned, her primal needs. And that will allow you to have more opportunities with women. And opportunity means getting out there. Okay. Simply, that was a point Destiny was making, which I saw at some point because I ended up scrolling. I saw part of that discussion and I scrolled back, but he makes a valid point that guys who are out, I mean, I wouldn't say just out trying to get sex, but yeah, kind of, right? Like guys who are out there hitting on women have more sexual opportunities with women, regardless of sexual market value, status, and all that stuff. For sure. Absolutely. I didn't see the whole point because it was like I saw that part and then I saw part of it and then I went back to the beginning and I'm not through the whole video. So I don't know what the whole point was, but making that point, I don't know if there's even a disagreement among the panel and everybody who was talking, but I'll validate that. Guys who are getting out there and talking to more women will have more opportunities. Now, guys, low sexual market value. Okay. The quality of opportunity comes down. Okay. But opportunity is still important. Guy can have a ton of value, but not have any game and not have not be putting himself into situations where he would meet women that are worth him sleeping with. And that guy's going to have scarce opportunities. And you see it all the time. You see married guys who are high value, in terms of their SMV, they offer all of those primal needs to a woman. However, they don't perceive that and they're, let's say, in a bad marriage and they're getting divorced and they don't understand their value to the sexual marketplace. They don't, and they don't have good game and they're not interacting with women who are available. So those guys get no sexual opportunity. And then you got some lower value dude who doesn't have nearly the money muscles game frame as high value dude, let's say, but he's out there just hitting on women. He gets more notches, right? Now, the quality of notches that the higher value, the better money muscles game frame guy, the higher quality that he could get if he were to have take those opportunities and learn some game, his possibilities are much higher, right? Because the SMV is higher. But again, if you're not doing it, you're not going to get it. So that's why it's not just your perceived mate value, but it's also your ability to communicate in an attractive way. That's your game and your opportunity. Those three things will determine the quality of your relationships, both short-term and long-term. And then once you get in the relationship, the quality of that relationship has to do with your perceived mate value to this person, your partner, nobody else. Now we get into subjectiveness quite a bit. Now the emotional buy-in happens. Now the emotions skew any kind of objective measure. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing, because the second part then is your relationship frame. So game in general turns into relationship frame, not just your internal frame, okay, yours, but now you have a relationship with somebody. So your communication with your partner in a way that's attractive, in a way that is productive, will determine the quality and her emotional buy-in and her perceptions of that relationship. So those are the two things now, because you're not worried about opportunity anymore, right? Because if you're in this relationship, although, if you're not in a monogamous one, you'll still be doing opportunity, but that matters less. I mean, there's, the, attractiveness in general and, pre-selection and all that, but that matters less to your partner. What matters more is just how she perceives your value. Brevard's law, how she perceives it, right? In getting those 5 needs met, is she perceiving your value as high, medium, and low in those 5 categories? That's the question. And that perception is skewed by your relationship frame, which is why frame is so important. I will now at this point plug my frame mastery course again. It is a year-long process to learn how to do all this shit. Okay. And guys who are in there are leveling their lives up and doing amazing for them compared to where they were at. They were doing very, very, they're doing well. And guys get in there and they're learning so much stuff. And so I'm going to take a select number of people here between now and June. And you guys are welcome to interview for that and see if it's a good fit for you. Link is in the description. So that's the plug. Now let's go to questions and then we'll close. Catching you live for the first time. Thanks, bro. good content over the current circus. Thank you. That's what I'm trying. Doing my best, man. Doing my best. What's your opinion prescription on the open on the guy's end? Okay, yeah, open on the guy's end, closing her end, aka threading the needle. Yeah, so my opinion on this is this can work. I'm not going to make the claim that it's for everybody. Okay, there's a lot of married guys where the juice is just not worth the squeeze. I mean, yeah, they look at other ass. Sure, they would love to bang a girl in certain things, but that sex to them represents like too much potential risk or loss. And maybe that loss is effort, right? There's guys out there, whether it's true or not, objectively doesn't matter. Subjectively, they perceive the cost, even if the girl, like their wife or girlfriend, would be like, okay, if they could take my, because a lot of guys take my year-long program and they learn how to have great relationships and sometimes have other girls involved, right? That's a thing that a lot of guys like to do, and it works out for the girl, works out for the guys. So in my opinion, it absolutely can work out. However, there's a lot of guys who don't want that. They just don't. It's not their thing. There's guys who have religious connotations. So if you're a Christian guy or a Muslim, well, Muslim, they have multiple wives, but Christian or Jewish, they don't like that. That's going to violate their identity. There's a lot of perceived risk, right, to that. So they don't want to bring other women in. And so that's not for them. And that's totally fine, right? And they do them. And I have guys who are Christian in my group who don't want to do multiple chicks. Like, I mean, once they're done with the dating market and some of them get in relationships or have been through relationships, they want to have the monogamous relationship. Good on them. I'm going to teach them all of the skills to have a happy monogamous relationship. There are limits to a monogamous relationship. And by the way, those limits are on the woman as much as the guy. It's not like the guy, oh, he has to give up sleeping with women. Oh, too terrible. Like, no, it's not the only thing. Okay. The thing is, there's frame issues when it comes to women. And for that woman seeing the guy as her best and not changing her mind on that, right? And being bought in on wanting to sort of compete for her man, that can be an issue. I'm not saying that it's impossible. Of course not. With skills, you can overcome that, but that is an obstacle to overcome. The most effortless relationships tend to be where the guy and the girl are experiencing other women together, meaning threesomes. I say effortless in terms of really healthy, doing really well, but they're not having, like, there's a lot of frame issues that don't happen because the girl perceives the guy she's with as being that apex alpha in her life. Why? Because if other girls are attracted to him and they're having sex together, if she can be over if she can get through the feeling of threat, from this other girl, if she doesn't feel threatened by the other girl, especially if she feels attracted to the other girl, she sees now this guy as the apex alpha anytime they play around with another girl, have a threesome. As long as there's clear boundaries and that she doesn't feel like, she's going to lose the guy she has to this other woman. And if she has some attraction to women too, this tends to work out very, very well. It's not for everybody. It tends to work out though. So can that work? Yeah, it can. You have to find a good match for a girl. It's not as you have to find the right girl, but let me tell you, it's not as hard as you think to find the right girl. Most women are open to that sort of a structure. Now, you just having side women, right? That's something that less women are open to rather than having the threesome experience, because with the threesome experience, the girl has a sense of control over what's happening because she's in it. If you're just off on the side, it's hard for her to not feel like you're taking away from the relationship. But, when I say taking away from it, I mean, potentially she loses that position as, the main girl. Right. And so that's something you have to mitigate. Any of these structures can work. You decide what you want, and then you design, your frame around that. And then the right woman, somebody who's gonna well, say easily, but a woman that's a good match for your framework, she'll come into your life, because it's not that hard. More women than you think are good with that structure. The only thing, again, I don't recommend is open on both sides, because that'll generally create a situation that's divisive or bad for both partners. So yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Let's see. Nice. And I got Juan. Thank you, man. Thanks for promoting the program. Juan's one of the guys in my program. He's doing really well. And so, appreciate it. All right. These guys are changing me. This is real shit. We're not, it's not just entertainment. Guys are actually doing a lot better, because that's where the skills are taught. Like questions like these, and I appreciate the super chat, by the way, but questions like these, how to do it. That's the question, and how to apply the knowledge to the individual girls you're dating and seeing. That's where the skill set comes in. That's where it takes training, and that takes, our one-on-one work together in a coaching environment. Right. And guys are doing it and doing really well. This one is the problem with threesomes is that they know each other and can be competitive in ways that generate more chaos than keeping it on the side. Can be correct. That is, and this is the way I want you to look at these structures. When you look at relationship structures, I want you to look at it like just like I was saying before, look at it as a reward versus a risk or a cost, right? And so monogamy, there's a cost involved in monogamy, and there's also rewards involved in monogamy. So you want to achieve the rewards from monogamy, you have to incur those costs, whatever those may be. That may be more effort when it comes to frame. That may be better selection in terms of women, because, it's harder for some girls nowadays to stay in frame given their past experiences and behaviors and their notches and their bullshit and the toxicity that exists nowadays in the sexual marketplace. Makes it harder for a girl to be monogamous. And I'm not saying she's always going to cheat and whatnot, but her just to be happy in that monogamous scenario and not negatively biased her partner and fall out of frame. That is a challenge now, because, pair bonding, those are challenged now. And so monogamy can be, risky, and monogamy can be costly in terms of that effort. But there's a lot of rewards for that. Having a soft harem, threading the needle in this case. Soft harem is more, bringing other girls in the relationship. Just like Sluggo here says, there are costs involved. You have to manage the girls. You have to have clear boundaries. You have to manage the main relationship is the key. Is that you and your girl are on the same page before you start inviting somebody else in, and that she has a strong sense of security in the relationship. But there's rewards for that too, rewards on her end as well as your end. Girls tend to be more into their bisexuality today in 2023 than they were 50 years ago. And if she's been imprinted by some of those things, experiencing some of those preclusions with her may allow for long-term happiness longer. And she's not feeling like she is incurring such a cost for monogamy with you. Right. And so these are benefits. So anytime you look at it, it's always a cost or benefit. My argument is that the cost to the male is too great, though, in a open polyamorous relationship or a swinger relationship in those structures. If she could sleep with other women, actually, and it might be fine. But if she is sleeping with other men, even though you're sleeping with other women, you're going to run into a cost, in my opinion, that's to her framework and to the frame of the relationship that's going to be too great considering the benefits. And that's for both parties. And so that's why I don't recommend that one. But the rest of them, there's always a workaround. It's just a cost benefit analysis. So that is it. Okay. Thanks for listening. All right. Make sure you hit that like button. I haven't even looked at where we're at. Okay. But if I should have the same amount of likes as I do guys who have logged on to watch, I hope I do, because that like button helps this actionable, good advice that is free to you get out to the public. And it's not mainstream because unfortunately, you guys being in unhappy and unstable relationships is good for the economy. But my argument is it's not good for you. And so I don't get put out there. It's not conspiratorial. It's just the way it is. The things I say violate too many of people's safe world theories for algorithms to be helpful to me. So you help me when you like my stuff. You help me with the super chats. And I want to say thank you. All right. Share it to a friend and till next time.